Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. We're your source for personal, professional, and organizational growth and development, where we share original research, explore industry trends, and interview executives and thought leaders from across the globe. We hope you join us often for practitioner-oriented content around all things related to leadership, HR, talent management, organizational development, and change management. Maximize your personal and organizational potential with Human Capital Innovations Podcast. Do you enjoy the Human Capital Innovations Podcast? Enjoy ad-free listening by going to the Patreon page, and please consider contributing even at the producer or sponsorship level. And please leave a review. Thank you for your support. Welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast. In this HCI Podcast episode, I talk with Rich Alderton about adaptability intelligence as a key leadership skill. Rich Alderton, welcome to the Human Capital Innovations Podcast.
Thank you very much, John. Great to be here.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be with you. You're joining us from the UK. I'm south of Salt Lake City in Utah. And today we're going to be talking about adaptability intelligence as a key leadership skill. I love the concept of adaptability intelligence. And of course, adaptability and the ability to pivot and adapt and adjust to the surrounding context is so important. It's always been important, but it's probably more important than it's ever been as things are rapidly changing all around us each and every day. And so I'm really excited to explore this with you. As we get started, I wanted to share Rich's bio with everybody. Rich has run a 1 billion supply chain and been the CEO of multinational firms. On his journey from the shop floor to the boardroom, he noticed that regardless of position, most people resist most change most of the time. So he set up high performance change to help people permanently overcome their resistance to change. And I would say the same thing. My experience has been that most people, most of the time, really do resist. As human beings, I think we like the facade of predictability. I call it a facade because I don't think it's real. I don't think things are actually that stable or that predictable. We like to tell ourselves that, but the reality is it's not. And most people want to try to stay within that bubble and feel comfortable and secure. And it just makes it all the more difficult when leaders and managers are trying to move change initiatives within organizations. It's one of the big reasons why so many change initiatives fail. So we're going to be exploring all this together. Anything else, Rich, you would like to add by way of your background or personal context before we dive on in further?
Oh, no, I think that's more than enough about me.
Good. Let's go ahead and start with defining adaptability intelligence. We talk about emotional intelligence and all the different EQ, IQ, LQ, all, there's all these different terms that people use. So Tell us what you mean by adaptability intelligence.
Okay, great start. So let's take that in two parts as it's two words. If you look at the definition of adaptability, if you look that up in the dictionary, it will say something like the ability to adjust to new conditions or to new situations, which is entirely correct. Of course, it's a little bit dry and almost entirely useless in helping us in the real world understand how to become more adaptable. So the definition, the more useful, helpful definition that I've defined it as, it is a subject of three components. It's about having the curiosity to see the need or opportunity for change, to seize opportunities, to manage threats. And then understanding that there is this need or opportunity. It is a fine, lovely academic exercise, but if you don't do anything about that, you're still going to get run over. So then you've got to have the courage to actually take a risk, do something new, do something you've never done before that might fail. And all of that is good. But if you decide to, and it takes you so long to get that courage up and do something and put that curiosity to work, then again, if you're running along the tracks in the right direction, but you're not running fast enough, you're still going to get run over. So it's also about having the velocity to turn. You mentioned that word pivot. It's that ability to pivot quickly. And the reason I use the word velocity and not speed is because velocity has that directional vector content. So if you turn, but you turn in the wrong direction, you're still sunk. So adaptability is about curiosity, it's about courage, and it's about velocity. And the reason that people like myself, I didn't coin the term adaptability. That came out about 2010, according to research that I can see. We tend to treat, and we might talk more about this, we tend to treat change as a logical, linear business process, something that is linked to the world of project management. But actually, human beings don't think that way. We certainly don't feel that way, and we don't act that way. So we need to stop talking about and thinking about adaptability as a business process and think about it as a form of intelligence, because contrary to what most people that I've ever encountered and talked to about this stuff, adaptability is something that can be learned. We tend to think that our adaptability level is fixed in stone, that it's a gift given to us, at birth, inherited in our DNA, because we can't remember the last time we actually changed our attitude to change itself. But the good news is nothing could be further from the truth, and anybody can become more adaptable if they want. So when we understand that, if you define intelligence as the ability to acquire and apply knowledge, well, it's entirely possible to acquire and apply knowledge about becoming more adaptable and changing the way that you think, feel, and act in response to change. And all of that is a very long-winded way of saying that's why we call it adaptability intelligence.
Yeah, well, I really like that. And clearly that's the world we're in. And so it makes sense that adaptability intelligence should be one of those muscles that we're building and stretching on a regular basis, that we're developing, so that we can be more effective managers and leaders. So tell us a little bit more, your thinking behind why adaptability is such a crucial leadership skill and competency in the modern world of work.
Yeah, well, look, I'd love to tell you that this is a complete insight that I came up with myself, and I'm the first to understand that adaptability is so important. But of course, nothing could be further from the truth. And it's more than a decade now since HBR identified adaptability as the new competitive advantage. And yet here we are in the next decade now. And still, it seems that most organizations are not getting to grips with adaptability. They don't understand what it is, and they're certainly not doing very much about it. So the question is, how do organizations go about preparing their people for change? Overwhelmingly, they either do the just do it, which is brilliant because it requires absolutely no planning, no communication, no thought about the person whatsoever. And the only advantage is that when it fails, because you've done no planning, failure comes as a complete surprise. Lovely. The other way, the proper way that organizations go about it, which is good as far as it goes, but that's a point I want to make, is change management in all its various forms. And we only need to look at Kotter's classic 8-step model to kind of hang all change management off. The idea that you need to look after people through projects, not just the hard stuff of project deliverables, milestones, Gantt charts, and budgets and all of that other stuff that project managers need to worry about. Here's the problem, though. Projects and change management and that they're associated with are really good at changing what people do. They're really not very good at changing how people think and feel about change itself. Somebody who has been herded from one field into the next by a project manager, by a change manager, almost certainly doesn't want to be herded into the next field any more than they wanted to be herded into this one. It changes what you do. It doesn't change your attitude to change. And it only prepares you for planned change in a world where, as we've all seen in the last 2 or 3 years, the war in Ukraine, COVID-19, there is more and more unplanned change coming at us. So if the only tool you are using today is project management and change management to prepare your people for change, then there's a whole sector there that isn't going to work. Oh, and by the way, sorry, I'm on my hobby horse now, but by the way, just think of it this way. If you only prepare your people for change at the point that change is happening, then by definition, you are behaving tactically. You are only dealing with something on the battlefield when it is happening. You've had all this time to prepare your people for change. You haven't done it until you need that new IT system or that new product introduction or that org restructure. And you are effectively then behaving tactically with the organization's most strategic asset. So just on that level alone, it doesn't make any sense. We need to not embed change in our projects, but in our culture, in the way that we think and the way that we act.
I completely agree. I think it's you go back 20 years and all the main change management models, very systematic. And I like systems and processes, and it's good to have those things. And there's a time and place for those things even today. But to your point, it's about shifting mindsets and it's about shifting culture. That will ultimately change the behavior that will allow for things to happen more organically and rapidly. And so the problem with I was just doing an exec ed training a couple weeks ago, and we were talking about some change management stuff. And at one point, one of the participants, a CEO of a tech firm, they just pointed out, they're like, well, wait a minute, everything we're talking about, and they kind of just reiterated what you just said. And they said, but how does this actually help us to just be proactively, constantly engaging in adapting and changing and iterating and moving in the direction we need to go? So he kind of stole my thunder a little bit because I was getting there next, but he went there and he asked the question. I'm like, you're right. I mean, there's a time and a place for change interventions. There's a time and a place for those kind of formal processes. But in the modern world, that is where the rate and pace of change is just increasing exponentially, and not just sociocultural, economic, political, like all the external contextual factors, but like technology and the systems that we use within our organizations, like everything is changing so rapidly that it's gone are the days that we can just think about, once a year, once every few years, kind of thinking about where are we at? Where do we need to go? Let's initiate a change process. No, it needs to be embedded in who we are, in our DNA, in our culture, so that we can be constantly doing it. And if we can't get there, we're constantly going to be trying to play catch up. We're constantly being reactionary instead of proactive and really strategic. And like you said, tactical in our approach. And that's just going to set us behind.
Yeah, there was a really important word. I agree with everything you said, but there was a really important word you said in there, which was mindset. And who believes for a minute that pushing people through projects actually changes their mindset? If you just think about it from that simple point of view, then you start to realize that actually change management is really good at what it does. I am not saying we should give up on change management. The statistics over the last 30 years prove that it really helps deliver more projects on time, on budget. Even though the stats are still pretty bad, they're much better when you use change management. What I'm saying is, wouldn't it be so much easier for those project managers and change managers if the people that they inherited, the people that they were trying to unfreeze, move and refreeze, already had an adaptable mindset where they were open to the idea of change? The resistance that organizations feel today is not entirely rational. It's almost entirely irrational, because most companies come up with good ideas that are still resisted as much as bad ideas. And the reason for that is because people aren't resisting your change, your beloved new IT implementation. I'm a consultant, so I'm duty bound to use the iceberg metaphor at some point in my life, and here it comes. What they're doing is they're only addressing their bit of the iceberg. It's all of that innate, deep-rooted, 50,000-year-old resistance to change, because we see change as a threat to our security, and that drives fear and anxiety. These are the things we've got to be dealing with. Talking about how brilliant this new IT system is going to be, that doesn't even register in the mind, because we haven't got past all of that adrenaline that people are feeling, that shuts the brain down from active thought, and just goes straight into fight or flight mode. You might as well be going blah blah blah, with all the rationale and brilliant talking and communication that you're doing. What we've really got to do is get under the surface and deal with people's inability to deal with their fear and anxiety. If you can help people control their fear and manage their anxiety, and there are brilliant ways to do both of those things. The American Psychological Association says that anxiety is highly treatable. Now, we're getting better in the Western world at dealing with this and talking about this stuff. We're still afraid to talk about fear, though. We're still walking around in a little bit of a cloud of testosterone here, gentlemen. But if we can deal with these two things, and get people out of their own way, then we can start to see change for what it really is, which is the best chance any of us is ever going to get to find out what it is that we can really do to make a difference and self-actualize ourselves, which is just a fancy way of saying realizing our potential. The status quo is never going to be able to give you those things. So when you start seeing even negative change as the opportunity to make a positive difference, then that's the mindset change that you mentioned, John, that is so important as a concept to understand here.
Yeah, and I think we've all seen the difference when you have a team of people where you've worked on developing that culture, where you've where you've fostered that mindset, and how they react to the inevitable challenges that your team or your organization are going to face. There's a stark difference between that kind of a team and those individuals versus kind of the norm, what we typically see in most teams and most organizations. And I have to say, it's invigorating, it's exciting, it's energizing, and it's just a lot of fun for me to be a part of teams when they kind of lean into it, when they embrace that. And it's just like their constant curiosity, their constant drive for learning and growth. This idea of being a lifelong learner and just constantly trying to challenge our assumptions and to lean into the future, that just is so invigorating to me. And those teams just accomplish so many things. They're able, no one has a crystal ball. No one can see around the corner, really. When we kind of talk about it that way, you don't really know what's going to happen. But man, it's those teams that are just usually way out in front. They often, will leapfrog even other front runners who become a little complacent because they're in the front and they feel like they're doing everything right. And so it's just so much fun to do that. And I think even for that reason alone, let alone all the innovations and all the cool stuff and the things that can come from adaptability, I think just that alone, to re-engage your people, to get them passionate about their work, to be excited about coming to work, I think that is a huge value in and of itself.
Absolutely. Adaptability won't help you see the future at all. And I don't pretend in any way to be a futurist. What it will do is it will give you the confidence to face whatever happens next. And as we've seen, from the global financial crisis through to COVID, how good are any of us at really predicting what is going to happen next? All we can do is mentally prepare ourselves for that, give ourselves, the basic technical skills that we're going to need as far as we can predict that. But the most important tool in our toolbox is having an adaptable mindset that is already ready for anything.
So at this point, we're 3 years into this pandemic or endemic, however you want to frame it these days. It upended our world. It shifted everything. Most people have seemed to cope with the pandemic okay. Obviously there's been challenges and there's been mental health issues, and it's been a challenging time to be sure. But people have kind of adapted. They've learned to get through it okay. Why do you think most of us need to work even more on that adaptability, though? I mean, it seems like people have kind of adapted all right, haven't they? So why is this continuing to be even more important?
Okay, that brings up a really, really interesting debate, because have they? I'm glad you put it as a question. Have they really adapted? Because for me, there is a big difference between resilience and adaptability. Again, let's go back to our dictionary. Resilience is defined as the ability to bounce back, for a deformed shape to retake its original form. It's what palm trees do in hurricanes. They'll bend with that extreme change for as long as is needed. And then as soon as the hurricane is over, because of their flexibility, they are able to bend back and retake their shape. And most people I know have, all they've wanted is for life to return to the end of 2019. And apart from this big debate about hybrid working, which seems to be one of the biggest tangible changes to work life, at least, most people just want things to go back to the way they were. Of course, they never will, but that's really what people want. The difference with adaptability is that it is about having the ability to bounce higher. It is about taking that negative event, whatever it is. They say you really find out who you are when the chips are down, and sometimes when we are sent down into the negative spiral, and we're sent down into the bottom of the valley, that's when we spring back the highest. And the opportunity, what an adaptive mind says is, I'm not just going to bounce back here. I'm going to use that energy that the universe has given me, even though it's negative energy, and I'm going to turn it into more than I was given, and I'm going to turn it into something positive. There's that story about realtors who, when the housing market goes into a bust down cycle, that there are those who go, oh my goodness, the world is ending. And there are those who go, this is brilliant, because when the upcycle next comes, there's going to be fewer realtors about, and I'm going to clean up. It's that kind of mindset that can see even negative change as the opportunity to make a positive difference. So no, I don't think the world has demonstrated massive adaptability. I think it's demonstrated fantastic resilience, but those two are different things.
Yeah, I think that's fantastic. And it's important to remember, like, resilience is super important. That's another topic we could really explore. Absolutely vital in the modern world, but it is fundamentally different. And yeah, the number of times I'm in conversations with individuals who just want things to get back to the way they were, which happens all the time. Like most of the conversations I have seem to have some element of that. And I'm like, what is this back to the way it was, like this supposed idyllic time that existed previously. Like, there have always been challenges. There's always been upheaval and concerns, and there's no idyllic time actually. But we just kind of reflect back and just kind of, because we're more comfortable, we just kind of wish it was that way again. The reality is things are always changing. Nothing is ever perfect. There's always challenges. There have been in our past, there are today, there will be in the future. And so I think just getting past that and not always striving to get back to the way things were, but to lean into how things can be is a powerful mindset shift. And it can set you up for some really cool things to happen. I mean, the truth about the future is that we don't know what's going to happen. We can plan, we can, have strategic foresight, we can do all these different types of things, but we don't know what's going to happen. That's scary. We like security. We like a sense of predictability. So it's scary when we don't know what's going to happen. But the truth is, when you don't know what's going to happen, it also means that there's endless possibilities. Like, anything could happen. So it doesn't have to be a bad thing. It doesn't need to be scary. You mentioned fear earlier. It doesn't need to be something we're fearful about. It can be something that we can lean into in terms of the be optimistic in terms of the opportunities and leverage these opportunities. But that can only happen as we're adaptive and as we can do that rapidly with velocity, like you mentioned.
So exactly to that point, one challenge I like to put to leaders and CEOs that I talk to is show me your strategy. Do you think that strategy is going to be implemented as first written? And these days, nobody I talk to will say yes to that. Everybody believes that some of the strategy is going to be irrelevant, some of it will be emergent and come along the way, and some of it there won't be time for or budget, whatever. So then I say, well, where in there is the bit of your strategy that prepares your company for the unknown bits that you have no idea what's going to happen to you yet? And then, of course, there's a bit of a pause. So my recommendation always, and to your listeners, is make sure that there's something in your strategy that is specifically designed to give your people this skill set called adaptability. Because guess what? If you have an adaptable mindset and a culture of adaptability in your organization, then it will unlock their ability to do all of those other things in your strategy more quickly, which means that they'll happen easier and more completely and at lower cost. And then when the world does pivot in ways that you can't yet imagine, guess what? There's only going to be one bit of your strategy that's still relevant, the only bit that you can possibly future-proof about your organization, and that is giving it that mindset that you talked about of adaptability.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Rich, this has just been a fantastic conversation. I know at the time I need to let you go, but before we wrap things up for today, I just wanted to give you a chance to share with the audience how they can connect with you, find out more about your work, and then give us the final word on the topic for today.
Okay. Well, thanks very much for the chance. www.highperformancechange.com. All of my contact details are in there. I'm on LinkedIn, Rich Alderton. And my final word on the subject would be adaptability is the one skill to rule them all. If you don't have adaptability, you are going to suffer a derail of your strategy. Stress levels will go up and you will pull your culture below the line by the resistance of change that you will increasingly find as you drive more and more change. The really good news is, and what I really want people to take away, is that adaptability is a skill that can be learned. That's why we call it adaptability intelligence.
Lovely. Wonderful. Thank you, Rich. It's been a real pleasure. I encourage the audience to reach out and get connected, find out more about what Rich and his team can do for you. And as always, I hope everyone can stay healthy and safe, that you can find meaning and purpose at work each and every day. And I hope you all have a great week. Do you enjoy the Human Capital Innovations podcast? Enjoy ad-free listening by going to the Patreon page, and please consider contributing even at the producer or sponsorship level. And please leave a review. Thank you for your support. Thanks again for joining us for this episode of the Human Capital Innovations podcast. I hope you stay healthy and safe and that you have a great week.